Imagine you live in the ancient world. You know, you are looking up at the night sky, or maybe you're watching a terrifying thunderstorm roll in.
Right, which would be genuinely terrifying back then.
Exactly. And the only stories you have ever been told about how this world was made, well, they involve these violent, chaotic brawls between really moody, unpredictable gods.
Just massive divine wars.
Yeah. The universe, you are taught, is basically just the cosmic fallout of all that fighting.
And in that worldview, human beings are essentially collateral damage. I mean, you are just trying to keep your head down so you don't get crushed by the crossfire.
Because the deities, frankly, couldn't care less about your existence.
Exactly. You're just in the way.
But then a completely new text emerges in the culture. Like a story that flips the entire script on how the universe began, who is actually in charge, and ultimately what you were doing here.
It was a massive paradigm shift.
It really was. And today, we are taking a deep dive into that very text. We're looking at a book called The Sovereign Creator, God's Royal Authority in Genesis 1 and 2. It's by Reverend Dr. Antonio Arnold.
Such a fascinating read.
Oh, absolutely. I was reading through Dr. Arnold's background, and what makes his analysis so compelling is his dual perspective. Like, he's a theologian, but he also spent years as a military officer.
Right, in the Army and the Air Force.
Yeah. And that military background is the key to his entire thesis, right?
Oh, for sure. He isn't just reading ancient scriptures as these, nice poetic myths. He is reading them through the lens of chains of command.
Right.
And the establishment of operational domains, delegated authority, that kind of thing. He looks at Genesis not just as a religious origin story, but as a deliberate, tactical counter-narrative.
I want to dig right into that concept of a counter-narrative, because reading his analysis of the dominant culture, it made me realize just how much of a psychological weapon ancient myths actually were.
Oh, they were entirely weaponized.
Yeah. He spends a lot of time on Babylon and their creation epic, the Enuma Elish. I always knew it was a story about the god Marduk defeating the sea goddess Tiamat, but Arnold frames this almost as state-sponsored propaganda.
Propaganda is honestly the perfect word for it. I mean, we tend to read these myths as ancient literature, right?
For sure, like just old stories.
Exactly. But for a Babylonian, the Enuma Elish was the ideological foundation of their entire empire. The story centers on Marduk achieving order through extreme, calculated violence.
Right.
He doesn't just defeat Tiamat, the chaotic primordial ocean. He literally tears her carcass in half.
Which is just so graphic.
It is. And he uses one half to build the heavens and the other half to build the earth.
Meaning the entire material universe is literally constructed out of a dead, defeated rival.
Yep.
Like the foundation of reality isn't love or intention, it's just conflict and carnage.
Well, think about the societal mechanism at play here. If you are a Babylonian citizen, or worse, a conquered subject from a neighboring nation living under Babylonian rule.
Which a lot of people were.
Right. This myth is recited at massive state festivals. It is perfectly designed to send a message. Our God achieved supremacy through violence, and therefore our empire achieves supremacy through violence.
Wow.
So if you step out of line, the empire will do to you exactly what Marduk did to Tiamat.
So it's literal psychological warfare. I mean, if you're a conquered Israelite sitting in exile, every ziggurat, every festival is reinforcing this idea that your defeat was, a cosmic inevitability.
Exactly. You never had a chance.
But then the Genesis narrative begins to circulate. And Arnold points out that Genesis uses a completely different method of creation to dismantle all that Babylonian propaganda.
Yeah, we're talking about creation ex nihilo, out of nothing.
Right, but specifically through speech, which is so different.
Oh, the repetitive phrase, "and God said," is perhaps the most subversive element of the whole text.
Really? How so?
Well, in Genesis 1, the creator doesn't have to wrestle a sea monster. He doesn't have to negotiate a treaty with rival deities. There is no struggle.
Not at all.
God speaks, and reality simply obeys.
To borrow Dr. Arnold's military lens for a second, it's like the Babylonian myth is like this chaotic battlefield where a warlord takes over by brute force, barely surviving the fight.
Right, a total brawl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Genesis is like a supreme allied commander walking into a room and calmly issuing a directive that the universe instantly obeys.
I love that analogy. What's fascinating here is that the lack of struggle isn't a lack of action. It's a demonstration of absolute, uncontested authority.
Because if you don't have to fight, it shows how powerful you really are.
Precisely. It establishes the creator's perfection. If a god has to fight to win, it means that God has limits.
Yeah, they could theoretically lose.
Exactly. It implies a margin of error. So by removing the conflict entirely, Genesis establishes a singular monotheistic king whose authority has no peer whatsoever.
Wow.
The cosmos isn't a battlefield, it's a secured territory, and the king is just issuing royal decrees.
So, okay, if the supreme commanding officer doesn't have to spend all their time and energy fighting off insurgencies and rival gods.
Their energy is completely freed up.
Right, so what does the supreme deity do when they aren't busy surviving a cosmic war?
Well, they establish logistics and infrastructure, they organize.
Which is so interesting. I was struck by how Arnold applies this to the initial state of the Earth. Genesis describes the starting point as tohu wabohu, right? A formless, empty void.
Yep, completely formless.
And instead of launching a military campaign against this dark void, the creator initiates this massive architectural project.
And we often get bogged down in modern debates about, the literal timeline of the 6 days of creation.
Oh, for sure. People argue about that constantly.
Right. But Arnold argues that the ancient audience would have understood this as the deliberate structuring of a royal domain.
Like setting up the theater of operations.
Exactly. Day 1, establishing the operational theater of time by separating light from darkness. Day 2, creating the firmament to manage the waters.
Creating boundaries.
Yes. Day 3, securing the dry land. The creator is taking the raw material of chaos and drawing absolute, clear boundaries.
The sources provided some incredible visual imagery to contrast these two worldviews, by the way.
Oh, the artwork is so telling.
It really is. Like the ancient stone reliefs from Babylon show these aggressive, muscular deities with wings, holding weapons, just frozen in mid-strike.
Very intimidating.
Yeah, it's all sharp angles, aggression, and martial law. But the imagery associated with the Genesis creation is of a meticulously ordered starry cosmos.
Lush landscapes. Serene waterfalls.
Exactly. It's the difference between an active war zone and a highly regulated botanical garden.
And that contrast highlights a world governed by divine caprice, unpredictability, versus a world governed by intentional strategic order.
But let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure, go for it.
Because viewing the universe as a highly regulated domain triggers some modern anxieties for me, and probably for a lot of you listening.
How so?
Well, when we hear perfect order, it often has a negative connotation, right? Like, doesn't perfect order sound a bit sterile? Yeah, like an overly organized filing cabinet where everything is color-coded, but absolutely nothing spontaneous or interesting can ever happen.
Right, I see what you mean. And that reaction makes perfect sense for someone living in a comfortable modern society where we really value spontaneity.
We do. We like things to be a little unpredictable sometimes.
We do. But to the ancient mind, chaos was not a spontaneous weekend getaway. Chaos was a localized famine that starved your family.
Wow.
It was a flood that wiped out your agricultural infrastructure overnight. In the ancient world, chaos basically equaled death.
Okay, I get that chaos is a literal physical threat in the ancient world, but surely there is a middle ground.
Yeah.
I mean, if this divine commander is just locking down the perimeter and dictating every boundary, does the text leave room for actual human freedom?
That's the big question.
Because uncontested sovereign authority can sound a lot like a totalitarian regime. Are we just cogs in this perfectly ordered machine?
So let's take that military logistics analogy a step further. When an army secures a zone and builds infrastructure, supply lines, walls, roads, the goal of that order isn't to freeze everyone in place.
Okay.
The goal is to create a safe perimeter where the people inside can actually thrive without the constant fear of an attack.
So the walls keep the bad stuff out so you can live.
Exactly. When Genesis repeats the phrase, "and God saw that it was good," the Hebrew concept of goodness there implies functionality, beauty, and harmony.
Oh, yeah.
The boundaries, like keeping the sea in its place, aren't martial law restrictions. They are the very parameters that make life possible in the first place.
Okay, that makes sense. So the order isn't a cage, it's a foundation.
Precisely. It's a foundation. The creator is preparing a perfectly balanced environment. The infrastructure is complete. The operational domains are secure. And the environment is ready for deployment.
Which brings up the most critical question of Dr. Arnold's entire analysis. Here's where it gets really interesting. If this is a secured, flourishing domain, who is getting deployed? Where do human beings fit into this structure?
Right. What's our role?
Because, okay, I was reading the section on the Epic of Atrahasis. That's another Mesopotamian myth from around the same era. And I couldn't help but laugh when I read it.
It's pretty wild.
It essentially describes humans as scab labor for a divine strike.
And that is historically accurate. I mean, in the Atrahasis epic, the lesser gods are just exhausted from doing all the heavy lifting.
They're tired of doing chores.
Literally, they are tired of dredging the rivers and maintaining the agricultural systems, so they rebel against the higher tier of gods.
A divine labor strike.
Exactly. And to solve this labor dispute and avoid a divine civil war, the gods decide to manufacture human beings.
So instead of being created out of love, we were literally created to be cosmic dishwashers for lazy gods.
Yep.
Like, we are essentially middle management for the cosmos, but at the absolute bottom of the chain of command. Our only purpose is to feed the higher-ups so they can sit back and relax.
That was the reality for them. Our entire existence in the Babylonian worldview was rooted in servitude to these demanding deities.
That sounds miserable.
And it was precarious. If we got too noisy or if we annoyed them, they would just wipe us out. In fact, in the Atrahasis epic, humanity starts multiplying, and the noise keeps the gods awake.
Seriously, they just wanted a nap.
They wanted to sleep. So their solution is to send a massive flood to exterminate the annoyance.
Talk about a toxic chain of command. That is unbelievable.
That really was.
But contrast that with Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Humanity isn't an afterthought. We aren't a solution to a labor shortage.
Not at all.
We are introduced as the zenith of the entire creation project, made in the image of God.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the phrase image of God is where Genesis goes from being a theological counter-narrative to a massive political subversion.
Okay, unpack that for me. How is it political?
Well, we have to look at how that phrase was deployed in the ancient Near East. Statues of kings were placed in conquered territories to represent the king's authority.
Like a stand-in for the king himself.
Right. But more importantly, only the king himself was considered the living image of the god.
Wait, really? Just the king?
Just the king. The king was the sole divine representative on earth, which, conveniently justified his absolute power over the common people.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if Genesis is claiming that every human being is made in the image of God, it is essentially stripping the king of his divine monopoly.
Exactly.
That completely upends the political structure of the ancient world. I mean, you are taking the most exclusive, elite, royal title and democratizing it.
It is a radical decentralization of dignity. Think about it. You are telling an Israelite captive living in Babylon that the Babylonian emperor is no more divine than they are.
That is staggering. The captive has the exact same inherent royal status as the emperor who conquered them.
Yes. And it comes with a specific operational directive. Humans aren't placed in this carefully ordered garden kingdom to be slaves. They are placed there as viceroys.
Viceroys, so they have real authority.
In military terms, it is delegated authority. The supreme commander has secured the theater of operations, and now he delegates the governance of that domain to humanity.
Like passing the baton.
Right. Your job is to steward the earth, to cultivate it, and to reflect the Creator's order and justice out into the world.
So you're taking a population that was told their whole lives that they were the accidental, expendable byproducts of a divine war.
Yeah, totally expendable.
And telling them they are actually the designated stewards of a sovereign king. Dr. Arnold argues this completely redefines the human experience.
It changes everything.
You transition from being a pawn on a chaotic chessboard to being a key player with actual agency, dignity, and a mission.
It is really hard to overstate how revolutionary that psychological shift was for them. It provided an intellectual and spiritual fortress for a marginalized people.
An intellectual fortress. I love that.
Because it told them that despite their current political reality, despite all the armies and the ziggurats of their captors, the fundamental reality of the universe was not violence and chaos.
It was intentional design.
Intentional design and delegated human dignity.
And this is exactly why digging into these ancient sources is so critical. So, what does this all mean for us? You might be listening to this right now thinking, I don't live in ancient Babylon.
Yeah.
I'm just commuting to work right now. Why does a thousands of years old Mesopotamian theological dispute matter to me?
It's a fair question.
It is. But it matters because this text is the historical bedrock for the modern concept of human rights.
Truly, the very foundation.
The very idea that you, regardless your economic status, your background, or your utility to the state, have inherent worth traces its roots directly back to this specific, radical counter-narrative.
It wasn't always a given that people had worth.
Exactly. Genesis functioned as the survival document that said, no, you aren't a cosmic accident. You are designed for stewardship. Dr. Arnold's analysis shows us that viewing the world through that lens of intentional design changes how you view the battle between chaos and order in your own life today.
Which leaves us with a necessary and maybe a little uncomfortable question to examine in our own lives.
Ooh, lay it on us.
Well, we can easily spot the Babylonian propaganda of the ancient world, right? Myths that made people feel like helpless victims or expendable labor.
Sure, it's obvious to us now.
But the mechanics of propaganda haven't disappeared. They've just evolved. So we have to ask, what are the modern myths or dominant cultural narratives that are quietly dictating your sense of self-worth today?
Oh, that's really good.
Consider hustle culture. It dictates that your only fundamental value is your economic output and your ability to grind.
Right, the whole rise and grind mindset.
Exactly. But structurally, how different is that from the Epic of Atrahasis, where humans only exist to do the heavy lifting for the powers that be?
Wow, we're still just trying to appease the modern gods of productivity.
We really are. Or consider the modern narrative of sheer cosmic randomness, which suggests that you are just an accidental byproduct of a chaotic universe, completely devoid of any inherent purpose.
The ultimate chaos.
Right. So are you navigating your life as a pawn subject to modern chaos, just trying to survive all the noise? Or are you stepping into the role of a steward, recognizing your inherent dignity and bringing intentional order and beauty to your own domain?
That is a phenomenal question to sit with. Are we operating as the disposable labor of our modern myths, or are we acting as the royal stewards of our own lives? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the roots of human dignity. Keep asking those big questions, keep challenging the narratives around you, and we'll catch you next time.